1. Actually happened this night. If you ask me, I suppose it all was inevitable, and this situation would happen in a matter of time, considering my lifestyle and my behavior. So to the backstory. I live in a shared 2-rooms apartment where I occupy one room, and the other occupies an old lonely lady. Our daily schedule is quite different. She wakes up at 9 AM, prepares food, and passes the whole day cleaning her room while listening to radio, whilst mine is about working at my PC the whole night, and then sleeping through the day, annoying the old lady with my snoring and farting. Thank you, junk food. Yay! So being a person who works at night, sitting on the computer, I, obviously, got some pretty typical diseases besides the mentioned problems with my stomach. I have some kind of osteochondrosis, which sometimes forces me to twist my joints, making disturbing cracking noises. Moreover, being a night person has given me the benefit to see better in the dark, but only with my corner areas of the eye. Not sure why, but it's okay to me. Well, backstory over, story time. The last night I was working at my computer as usual, when I suddenly felt a terrible urge to pee. Okay, I thought, guess it's time for all that cola to exit me, and began my journey to the room of relief. But apparently I wasn't the only one in need of relief this dark time of 4 AM. By the sound of the opening door, it was obvious that the old lady was going to the toilet too. And so started this snowslide of events that led to the fuck-up. I opened the door and saw the old lady exiting her room. To see her better in the dark hallway, I had to turn my head to an angle where my corner area of my eye would see her in the dark. I assume that to this moment the old lady didn't notice me, as she doesn't hear good and can't see a damn thing in the dark. So in 2 or 3 seconds she suddenly notices me, poorly illuminated by the screen from my room, and greeting her with a really weird head angle. She stops in confusion, and at the same moment, I feel my neck is somewhat stuck. All the glory to the osteochondrosis. And starts to give me pain signals. The pain I feel instantaneously distorts my face into a grimace, and I start trying to move my head, apparently without any luck. So being the idiot that I am, I make the best of the best decision that I could possibly make. I forcefully move my head with my own hands, making a terrible bone-breaking noise on every vertebra in my neck, while still maintaining eye contact and wrinkling my face in pain. Dear Reddit, do you think that the lady liked my accidental horror movie performance? Well, of course not. She screamed in pure terror and slammed the door shut, hiding in her room, while still screaming. And the final part, what did I do to ease that situation? Well, my brilliant mind decided to apologize, and I knocked on her door, probably scaring her even more, as she screamed in fear once again. And now I am in my bed. First thing first, writing my story on Reddit. Good night, day, everyone. I hope somebody will laugh at this. Edit just woke up to realize that the story has gotten attention, and even got me gold. Thank you, kind stranger. Thank you for your nice words. I'll consider rethinking my lifestyle. As for the old lady, I've just deeply apologized to her, although she still seems to be in light shock. I looked as a complete idiot, explaining her what happened. But anyway, she accepted my apologies and went to her room, looking confused, but at least not terrified as fuck. Two. As most posts on TIFU, this didn't happen today but a week ago. So I was cooking some noodles, and when it was done I prepared everything to be transferred to a soup bowl. But I realized I had put in way too much water in it. With my stubbornness I said fuck it, and tried anyway. That was my first mistake. My second mistake was when I realized that the eggs I had put in. I've done it too late, so it didn't get properly cooked. My third mistake happened when I was transferring everything to the soup bowl, realizing that it was about to overflow, and that there was no way I could fit it all. So I tried desperately putting back the noodles into the pot instead, as they were just hanging between it all. I failed, of course, making a huge splash of hot water splurt everywhere, burning myself. All of this accumulated into a fine range of madness, making me drop my soup bowl that still had hot water in it, of course burning me again. Now this made me extremely mad, making me turn around and hitting my fridge. After a couple of seconds after the punch, I realized that the pain was still lingering, so I had to look at my hand and noticing I didn't have a knuckle anymore from my pinky finger. Anyway, now the pain was really starting to build up, and I also noticed that I couldn't use my fingers at all. I've never experienced anything like this before. Sure, the pain wasn't the worst I've had, but it was up there. So of course I started panicking as I lived by myself. I called for an ambulance, which of course I couldn't get as it wasn't life-threatening. So they called for a taxi instead. Now I live in a small village, so there are no taxis nearby. So I had to wait about 40 to 45 minutes for the closest taxi to get to me. Then, of course, there's no hospital close by with an x-ray machine, so I had an hour and 15 minutes drive to the nearest one. Luckily, for me, this happened at 7 in the evening on a Wednesday, so when I went inside the emergency room, there were very few people, so I had to wait maybe 10 minutes before I could see a doctor. I got some anesthesia on my hand, and this is probably the most painful thing I've ever felt. He hit my nerve with it, so it was like an electric shock that went straight up my arm, with the worst pain I've ever felt through my whole arm. This was my first time ever breaking a bone, and I broke it by hitting a damn fridge. All I could think of during it all was a saying we have in Sweden, which goes like this: "Or huvudet dumt för kroppen lida." A rough translation is basically, if your head's dumb, your body is going to suffer. So now I have to walk around with a cast on for 3 weeks, and then see if my doctor got my finger placed correctly, as it was bent downwards and then back up. As my last x-ray was taken after he had put a cast on, and he said he couldn't get it back, so it was like when I broke it. 3. This happened almost exactly a year ago, March 15th, 2016. In early March, I was unfortunately diagnosed with leukemia. I am now 3 months in remission, so now I'm able to look back at this specific incident with a smile. So back to the event in question. Being treated with chemotherapy by the wonderful and underrated NHS, and being under 35 years old, I was given the opportunity to have my sperm frozen and preserved at a sperm bank, financed by the NHS for 10 years prior to my treatment, as chemotherapy can potentially make you infertile. Having not had any children and not decided if I would or wouldn't, I decided to take advantage of this opportunity. This was to take place in a fertility clinic run by a private company that was used for private IVF treatment, amongst other things. I had only been in hospital for about 4 days, having been treated for multiple blood clots in my lungs, a chest infection, and the start of pneumonia, so was constantly attached to an oxygen tank and masked up. These conditions mean that I was unable to start my chemo and left me completely breathless should I move, even a minimal amount. So, sitting in a wheelchair and attached to gas, I was wheeled by my parents into the fertility clinic near the hospital I was staying in. When we arrived, there was only one other couple in there, and this was surprising, as the waiting room was massive. This industry is obviously a very lucrative one. After going through the process and the paperwork, I was shown the room I would be doing the deed in. I was told that I would have to walk in unaided, as there was no room for a wheelchair. So this is where my embarrassing issue started. After taking an age but successfully making it into the room unaided, I was elated but blowing out of my back passage. After sitting down in the room to gather my breath and wipe my brow of sweat, I started to flick through one of the provided magazines. Many people who have had cancer will know that it is extremely difficult to become sexually aroused, no matter what you see or feel. Understandably, it's one of the last things to cross your mind. Having been in the room for about 30 minutes with my eyes closed, trying to enter my memory wank bank, and get myself in the mood to enjoy my moment with Mrs. Thumb and her 5 daughters, I managed to gather some momentum. To avoid any more graphic details, let's just say I was in the room for a further 30 minutes, but I managed to get something into a cup for a submission. At that point, my dad knocked on the door, clearly bored and impatient. I told him I was ready and would be out immediately. That was my biggest fuck-up. Although I had completed the Cyclops milking mission, I was physically in a complete state, sweating profusely and out of breath to the point to which people unaware of my health condition, I probably looked like I was having an asthma attack. As I started to walk back into the waiting room soaking in sweat, out of breath, and looking like someone who had just run a marathon, I looked up from my defeated stance to notice that the whole waiting room was full of couples who, at this point, were all staring at me as clearly there had been several nurses and my parents worried about how long I had been and several conversations about a potential medical emergency. As this was a private clinic, it would not have been clear to anyone there for treatment that I had cancer and was in a critical condition, and having heard several sniggers and seen wry smiles, I had probably looked like a healthy chap who had just had an extremely ragged and rough session firing the flesh musket. Needless to say, this is and hopefully will be the most embarrassing thing to happen to me. 4. So I recently moved to Russia to live with my wife. We went to go meet her uncle at his house, just to chat about family and to give us a belated wedding gift. He's in a full army uniform, but I don't think anything of it, because I've already seen hundreds of guys in army uniforms every day, and become oblivious to it. At one point, we got to talking about his cat, where he got it, she's cute and playful and all that. Then he showed how she chases after lasers, got out a laser gun and shone it around everywhere, and the cat went crazy and we had a laugh. He left the laser thing on the bed. Around 30 minutes later, my wife was in the bathroom for a long time, and the uncle was reading something and I was just left there being bored. I saw the cat walking by and I decided to get the laser thing and play around with the cat for a while until the wife gets back. The laser was in the shape of a gun. I'm from England, and there's no weapons or anything like that, so in my mind it was just like a toy in the shape of a gun. We have no real guns, but millions of toy guns and things in the shapes of guns. So in my English mind, it's a laser toy gun thing. The fact we're in Russia, and I'm in the house of an army guy completely went over my head for this moment. So I, naturally, pointed this thing at the floor next to the cat, where she would be able to notice the laser, and pulled the trigger. There was a little button for the laser somewhere else, but I didn't see it. And BAM! The loudest fucking noise and brightest light I've seen in my life. I was literally blind and deaf for like 10 to 20 seconds. When I could see again, there was smoke everywhere, the windows were shaking, the whole house was in smoke and the alarms went off. I'm kinda in shock, and I don't know what the fuck just happened. People knocking at the door, asking what's going on. The wife came out and started shouting at me, calling me the biggest fucking idiot ever, saying, "I left you alone for 1 second, and look what you have done." Then I explained I thought it was just like the laser to play with the cat. And she was like, "Did you fucking shoot it at the cat? Oh my god!" And went to look. The cat obviously was scared and ran and hid somewhere, but I don't know where because I was blind. We all searched for the cat for a few minutes. The uncle wasn't even mad at me. He was calm and was just worried about the cat at this point. We found it, and she was fine, and stroked her and calmed her down. There was still smoke everywhere, but everything seemed to be okay. The wife was still mad at me and couldn't believe what I did. And I'm all upset because I really didn't mean to do it. And I'm still kinda in shock, and she's mad at me and I'm worried about the upcoming angry lecture from the uncle. But the uncle started laughing his ass off at the whole situation and didn't care. Gave me a pat on the back and said, "No worries." He was in hysterics. Some foreign guy comes to his house, doesn't know what anything is and frightens the shit out of himself, while the wife calls him an idiot the whole time. It is pretty funny. I also started laughing, and the wife, still mad, calling us both idiots for laughing, and said time to go home. She was in a pissy mood for the rest of the day, but I had a good time. 5. Alright, so this happened about 6 months ago, but it's probably the stupidest decision I've ever made in my life, and quite the story to tell. So anyway, my best friend and I were bored over the summer, and would always go to IKEA and various stores, and entertain ourselves, usually involving building toilet paper or mattress forts, or even playing kickball in a variety of stores. Anyway, we were at IKEA late at night over the summer, and entered a big storage area of the store, with 5 to 6 story high shelves loaded with furniture and cardboard boxes. Keep in mind the store closed at 9 and we were in there around 9:45 to 10, trying our best not to make any noise or get caught. I thought it'd be sweet if we could climb up some of those strange storage shelves, 50 to 60 feet above the ground, and just chill out. So he told me to go first, and I just made my way up, realizing it probably wasn't the safest idea we'd ever had. But hey, we were teenagers looking for some fun. So I get about halfway up the structure, 30 to 40 feet, swing my leg up to get higher. I wasn't really focusing on where my legs was going, and smacked it on a metal bracket that held the shelf up. At first, I didn't really think much of it, because it didn't hurt at all, and just thought it would bruise up the next day. However, as I pulled myself to my feet on the next shelf, I felt something drop down my leg, and sure enough, I've got a massive gash on my kneecap, and I'm gushing blood all over assorted furniture and cardboard boxes. Like, these things are soaked, and the blood continues to drip shelf by shelf onto more IKEA products. At this point, my friend starts to begin to notice what's going on and starts to freak out. I'm walking my way down so we can get to an urgent care or something, when an IKEA employee appears and begins to stock the shelves just below me. This is the point where I'm honestly worried for my life. Meanwhile, I just wait for this guy to stock his cardboard boxes while I'm sweating bullets 5 feet above him, all the while losing massive amounts of blood, which continues to spill on IKEA products. He eventually leaves and I make my way down. However, because the store had already closed, these metal barriers had separated the doors from the storage area, for God knows what reason. Anyway, my friend and I proceed to hop this barrier, still bleeding, and found our way to the men's room. We spent the next 45 minutes stopping the bleeding and making sure we wouldn't get caught on the way out, if they hadn't already found the trail of blood we had left. At around 10:45 we stopped hearing the construction sounds and banging of boxes and decided it was time. We ran out the door, me limping, and booked it down an escalator to my car, hearing people yelling behind us but not stopping for anything. He drove me home, where we cleaned up the wound, and had to tell our parents the stupid decision I had made. We went to urgent care the next morning and got my knee stitched up, explaining to my doctor how exactly it had happened, still wondering what they thought about the incident, and how they took care of the blood I left up there. Edit. 3 to 4 months later, IKEA issued a statement, telling its customers the dangers of hiding and horseplay in their stores, and said they found numerous examples of the dangers of these activities. Hey everyone, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 5 True Embarrassing Stories, episode 33. Thank you very much to everyone who allowed me to use their stories in this video. I would also, apology time I suppose, I'd like to say I am very sorry to the people of Sweden. In fact, if you've ever even just met a Swedish person, I would like to apologize for my attempt at speaking their language. I did look up that phrase. I couldn't find anyone saying it, so in the end I had to try and piece it together word for word, and it may not have come out the best, but there it is. I'd also like to apologize to the people of Russia for my attempt to do your accent. I mean, I'll probably do it again at some point, whenever there's another story involving Russian people. But I'm still sorry. Oh yes, before I go, I'd also like to say a special thank you to the author of story number 3 for sending your story in. That was a subscriber story, and your timing was very good, my friend. If you hadn't sent it in, there may not actually have been a TIFU this week. So thank you very much for sending that in. Okay, and with that, I think I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.